Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin. These two will debate real-life issues from a Catholic perspective every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Make the world Catholic again.
I just love that music. It's so perfect for a Monday morning, soothing, calming, relaxing. Welcome in, everybody, to Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin here in the Catholic Family Podcast. As you heard Danny say there, make the world Catholic again. And we all should be praying every single day for the Catholic faith to be infused into our culture. We need to be praying. We need to be saying our daily rosary and make that prayer that God makes his one true faith infused into the hearts of our leaders, of our nation, and for all of those who we know, and allow us to live that life that is truly and authentically Catholic. Today, I'm really excited to have a friend to the show back on with us. Her name is Anna Lawless, and she is a pro-life activist. She's done a lot of work not only in DC, but online in the social media realm as well. Well, Anna, I am so happy that you were able to come back with us. You got so much good feedback from the last show, and I just had to bring you on again. And, you know, what I love about your Twitter, Anna, and people need to go visit you, Anna M. Lawless. Did I say that right? Lawless. Lulus.
Yeah.
Anna M. Lulus on Twitter. Your tweets, Anna, are so to the point. You know, you don't beat around the bush. You make direct, effective tweets. And I just love reading them. You tweet about life, you tweet about family, you tweet about faith, you tweet about marriage, and they're messages that people need to hear. And I think you avoid all the word salad, you avoid all the fluff, and you just put it out there for people to hear. So I think you do a great job with it. So thank you for coming on, and it's great to have you once again. And we're here to talk about what? Your favorite topic, your mission in life, right?
Pro-life.
Your mission in life. You have made, what's your follower account now? You're getting up there.
I am. My Twitter is growing a lot, which is honestly
growing.
such a blessing. I'm like, it's all God though, man, because I don't know why people follow me, but it's like truly such
I just told you why. I couldn't have been any clearer as to why.
It's truly a blessing. I mean, you know, if I continue getting a following, hopefully I just use it for God's glory and not my own. So it's like, that's my goal. So it's like, if it's happening, great, and it's God's will, and I'll continue to use it as such and speak his voice, really not mine. But if not, like it's all up to God at this point, but it's cool to see how he's kind of been using me specifically more so with the pro-life movement.
So you put out a lot of tweets that just are, like I said, right to the point of get married, have a family, raise your children in the faith, have lots of babies. You seem to recently, I noticed a lot of your tweets center on this child born with a chromosomal deficiency is worthy of life and deserves to have her life lived. How many hate DMs do you get about these things? Are your DMs flooded with people angry or bitter or nasty towards you? What's it like in the unseen DM world for you?
You know, I think it's more so in the comment section than in the DMs per se.
Okay.
I think sometimes it ends up being in the DMs, but I do try to put out tweets where I'm like, how can you even be mad at this? I'm saying Down syndrome kids should be able to live and not be aborted. Like, if you really are DMing me angry about that, like you have an issue, you know? So I think it generally happens within the comment section more so than anything else. And people just try to say, like, you're trying to twist things into anti-choice propaganda, which I think is hilarious.
It's your bio.
It is. Is it media? Yeah. And it stemmed from, it's funny because Media Matters did like a hit piece about me one time, and a few other pro-life figures about like us twisting things into anti-choice propaganda. And I read that and I remember thinking, like, sure, like, call me an anti-choice propagandist because I'm 100% anti-choice if your choice includes killing innocent human beings, especially innocent children. Like, I'm for surely against that choice to do so. But I think it's bizarre that people don't necessarily have an argument to refute it because how can you? especially when you're just advocating for somebody's worth and value as a human being. Like, even if you disagree, like Simone Biles, I tweeted something about her yesterday, I believe, or a few days ago, where I mentioned her story. Like, she was born of a drug addict, moved from foster care home to foster care home, was eventually adopted, and now she's one of the most decorated Olympic athletes of all time. Thank God she was born. And she now is incredibly pro-abortion. But at the end of the day, I'm like, your life is a testimony to why people should choose life. Not saying only successful people matter, right? Like, every single human life is valuable, no matter if you choose to be an Olympic athlete, if you choose to be a stay-at-home mom, or, you know, if you're a child with Down syndrome or you have a terminal illness. Everybody is worthy of life. Everybody's life is worth living. And God has a unique purpose for each and every single human being. And it's beautiful in and of itself. So it's crazy. And even people I disagree with, like Simone Biles now is pro-abortion, which I think is antithetical and almost hypocritical in her with her story, because praise God, she was allowed to live and be born. But I still think she has the right to be. I'm glad she was born, even though I disagree with her, even though I think her views on the life issue is incredibly flawed. I still am so happy she's born. And so it's almost like, how can you guys be mad at me for acknowledging the value of somebody's human life? I almost like think it's, I don't necessarily let it affect me. And a lot of times they don't have necessarily good arguments. So they just resort to, like, you're just trying to twist things to fit your agenda instead of actually giving me a substantive argument. Yeah.
Well, there's so many big names who have such a powerful testimony with that. I'm thinking Andrea Bocelli. I think Celine Dion. There's so many people who I wish would take that issue of theirs that they, you know, happen to deal with as an unborn child and use that as a message to reach people who are probably, you know, either a victim of that or in a similar situation. There's nothing more powerful in a lot of ways than to share a testimony, than to share your own, than to be a living, breathing example of, I was almost aborted and here I am today. I am every bit of proof that when I was in the womb of my mother, that I was who I am now. And that needs to get out there. You know, that needs to get out there. But so far, our conversation today, Anna, you know, one of my favorite media personalities, Pearl Davis, that's a joke. You can, there you go, little giggle. Put out a tweet that was extremely controversial, and I brought you on just to talk about this. Now, I agree with what you're going to say about this, but I don't know if I want to play a little devil's advocate, but I want to just push a little bit to see what I could pull out of you here. The tweet our viewers can see it on the screen is from Pearl Davis, and she said the abortion debate is lost. There is 0 point in arguing because abortion isn't going anywhere. Focus on battles you can actually win. And you replied to that, Anna, and your tweet got some traction. And if you can just kind of elaborate on that a little bit, tell us why the abortion debate is not lost and why there is a reason for arguing it, and why we can win this battle. What's your overall message here? Back to Pearl.
I would say there's no point in you tweeting that, because I think I replied to that tweet specifically with the wording of, if you go into a game with the mindset of, I'm going to lose this game, you probably will end up losing that game. So why do we have the mindset that we're going to lose the abortion issue when it's the most important issue of our time? It's the biggest human rights injustice of our time. It quite literally brutally poisons or dismembers unborn children in the womb. Why are we walking into the battle? Because it is a battle for life. It's a battle for the culture to make it a culture of life and not a culture of death. Why are we walking into the battle saying we're just going to lose? Because if you have that mindset, you almost 10 out of 10 times will lose. So I hate having that negative mindset. And I think it's actually more of a winning issue than most people think. I think a lot of times the Republican Party uses the life issue as kind of just a cave or excuse as to why they end up losing elections. They like to use the life issue to win elections, and then when they lose elections, they like to blame the life issue, which makes absolutely no sense. But I do think there are a lot of other social issues that would be deemed more controversial or more of a quote unquote losing issue. But for example, like the gun issue, I think is heavily controversial and debated within our country. But they would never cave on the gun issue, which I think is a good thing. I think you should stand firm in that. But just like that with the life issue, which I think is an easy issue to win. You're quite literally trying to protect human life and support mothers in the process. How can you lose on that? That is such an easy thing to win on. But when you start having all these political commentators come out and saying like, oh, it's not necessarily an issue we should be focusing on, it's hurting us in the elections. Well, yeah, if you keep saying that, it will hurt us in the elections. But if we have more political commentators come out and say, hey, you know what, we are actually going to win this, because in the long run, we are not only correct, but we have truth on our side, and truth is attractive. And you don't necessarily have to do much to actually win over a culture when you have truth on your side. So I think the conservative movement needs to completely reject this notion that protecting innocent unborn children is just going to hurt them in the elections. And at the end of the day, if that was the case, I'm completely okay going to my grave knowing I didn't compromise on an issue that actually directly affected human life. But I don't think that's the case. And I think they need to stop perpetuating this message and making it and normalizing it within the Republican Party, so much so where the GOP platform compromised on the issue recently, because it's just going to end up to more children dying.
So how do you, I tried to look at a few resources here. I pulled up Pew Research. I pulled up Gallup. No, I agree with your point. I agree with everything you said, but how do I, or where do we go when looking at some of the poll numbers, Anna, and kind of seeing that, no, I'm not saying polls are completely accurate and they are an accurate portrayal of the pulse of America, but from the things that I found, it seems as though abortion being banned throughout the country, or some sweeping legislation that makes it entirely illegal, is extremely unpopular. If I pull up here Pew Research, it looks like 63% of Americans say abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and only 36% should say it should be either illegal in all or most cases. And numbers from Gallup kind of say the same. So would you agree though that it polls at an unpopular rate, but is our message wrong, and is that why it's polling the way it's polling, or what do you think is off here?
Multiple things. I think the narrative and messaging is off. You have all these political quote unquote conservative commentators saying it's a losing issue. So naturally, you're if you keep saying that from a conservative platform, your conservative followers might start believing you. So I think if you try to normalize that within both political parties, naturally the culture is going to assimilate and adopt that type of messaging or mindset without even realizing it. It might be a subconscious realization. I also think our culture is depraved, and sexual depravity is everywhere and normalized from a very, very young age. And I think until you need to focus on bringing the culture back to have more standards when it comes to sexual morality. And I think that will directly affect the life issue and people's acceptance of that. At the end of the day, though, I do think people know what abortion does and don't like it. Like if you were to mention abortion to someone, even to somebody who might claim to be pro-abortion or they might call themselves pro-choice, and they don't like the term pro-abortion. And that should let you know that human beings instinctually know what abortion is, because people who claim to be pro-choice are really just only pro the choice to abort kids, which means you are only really just pro-abortion. You're not pro-choice, because any other choice you don't necessarily like or you're not necessarily advocating for. So they are pro-abortion, but every time I use that label, they have this repulsive reaction to it, because instinctually people don't like abortion because they know what abortion actually does, which is to end the life of an innocent human being, a child. So naturally they like using the word pro-choice because in their brain it doesn't make it as icky of an issue, because they don't want to actually say they're for an act that directly ends the life of a human being. That is specifically what that act was designed to do. So I do think for the most part, culturally, our society doesn't really like it. I think we've just been told to like it on now both political parties that we have dominating American politics right now. But also, I do think there is an issue with just morality completely. Our culture is decaying in terms of having any moral standards across the front. And I think that's due to the deconstruction of the family, which is why like you mentioned before, I'm very pro people getting married, pro having big families, staying loyal, staying committed, going to church, having some purpose and reason for your life. And all of that stems through Jesus Christ. Our identity is in him. We are made in his image. And if we don't have everybody's seeking for purpose and identity. And if we don't find that within Christ and adopt more of a healthier moral standard for our lifestyle, we're going to be depressed. We're going to engage in acts that creates a human life. And then we're going to want to get out of the responsibility of taking care of that child. And because we live in an individualistic society within the United States, it's really easy for us to say, well, let's just get rid of it because it's a burden to me. And that's just the American mindset that we've adopted and normalized within our country. So I think bringing our culture back to having some moral standards would be another incredibly helpful way to get people to veer away from abortion. That being said, I do think sometimes laws affect that greatly. So to say this is just a losing issue, so we shouldn't invoke or have any legislation that prohibits people from getting abortions, I think is completely bogus, because you wouldn't say that with theft. You wouldn't say that with slavery, for example. Like, they had to federally ban slavery and force people to comply, and then the culture naturally adopted to that. So I do think if your society or cultural values and principles are so far gone, sometimes you do have to force the culture to apply by legislating morality. And that comes with the life issue. So I think there are a lot of factors that play into it. And the polling, a lot of times, sometimes I would have to look at the questions to see like what was specifically asked. And if you changed up the wording, if people would answer that differently, I do think that would be an interesting study to have those like comparisons. But
well, yeah. I've even had some discussions lately with a few people that I work with, and we usually try to avoid these sort of topics at work for a number of reasons, but abortion did come up not too long ago, and I stated my position and where I am with the issue. And I had one woman come up to me, and she actually, Anna, she whispered to me that I agree with you. Like, she couldn't say it boldly, and it almost had to be a hidden sort of agreement that nobody else can know. I believe this. I did it a few days later with somebody else, and I got the same exact reaction from a man who, while in the conversation, he shrugged his shoulders and he was like, you know what, I do agree. And he said it in a lower tone of voice. That was two people who weren't so bold and assertive in their sharing of these beliefs. So I agree with you that the brain, there's almost this brainwashing of you can't think this way, and if you do, it's wrong, because that is what we're told, even from conservative media outlets who have kind of either toned down the issue or have shied away from it. So I think, yes, I think there are more people out there than we think who are sharing our beliefs, but they're either afraid to say it, or they're almost being convinced that I can't have this position publicly, even if I think it personally. And I think that's, as you said, I think that's being force fed to us, because I refuse to believe that no matter what polls and whatever else comes out there in terms of data, that saying that an unborn child has a right to life is a losing issue. I cannot believe that. And unless we're so morally bankrupt, which I guess I could see, but I refuse to see that as losing issue. So for somebody like Pearl here, when we again look at this tweet, focus on issues you can win on. Like, Anna, if we can't win on the life issue, what left is there? You know, like, what, everything stems from being born. Everything comes from life, right? So where there's nothing left.
You're 100% right. And I agree with you. And that goes back to I don't think generally our society likes abortion, going back to, they don't even like being called pro-abortion. They want to use the term pro-choice to identify, because they don't even like being called pro-abortion. Once we have a society that's maybe like the majority of society accepts the label pro-abortion, then I might start believing these polls that say this is a losing issue. But until then, I don't believe it. Everything does stem from the life issue, like you said. So if you don't conserve life, what the heck are you conserving? Everything is built upon that. If you don't have the right to life, everything else falls apart. And the dehumanization of human beings starts within the womb. So once you start doing that, you're naturally going to see that with people who are born, which is why you see things that are being adopted, like euthanasia, issues when it comes to immigration or whatnot and how that indirectly affects human life, people don't necessarily care anymore because we've already devalued the most vulnerable human beings in our society. Why do we think that's not going to happen to people now outside of the womb? So I do think the majority of people within our country don't like abortion. They are repulsed. They don't like even talking about it, which is why I do think it's more of a winning issue than people like to say or realize.
Do you feel, and I don't know how deeply you want to go into this because it's kind of touching on politics, but do you feel the GOP as a whole is sort of content with what the Supreme Court did and reverting it back to the states and leaving it there? Because my opinion, which I don't mind saying of my own end, was that I don't think the Supreme Court legislated morality at all. I don't think it was a pro-life victory in the sense that I don't think the Supreme Court said, you know what, abortion is wrong, human life begins at conception, and we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I think they looked at it from a pure constitutional perspective, interpreted I hate using that word, looked at the Constitution and weighed the law against it. And you invoke the 10th Amendment, and they said, you know what, abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution. It's a 10th Amendment issue. It goes to the states, and we're gonna just revert it there. I don't think the Supreme Court was making a pro-life decision by any stretch of the imagination. I think they were just following law. So I don't know what you might want to touch on there, but do you think that the GOP as a whole right now is content with leaving abortion to the states with nothing else to do or to go from there? Any thoughts on that topic?
I think the reversal of Roe v. Wade has exposed fake pro-life politicians. So I think the GOP wanted us to believe they were pro-life to win elections, which is why I think it's ironic now that they're saying the life issue is going to lose elections, because some people quite literally campaigned off of being able to get elected because I will help you reverse Roe v. Wade, and now it's completely flipped, which is ironic and hypocritical to some extent. But I do think it has exposed fake pro-life politicians, and they wanted us to believe the GOP platform or GOP as a whole was more pro-life than it actually was. But at the end of the day, politicians on both sides of the aisle are incredibly corrupt, and people weaponize abortion. A lot of politicians are incredibly corrupt when it comes to sexual immorality as well, and standards. A lot of them get divorced, cheat on their wives. Not all of them, but quite many. And abortion is very useful to them if they were engaging in activities where it creates a unique and distinct human child. So I do think it's beneficial to some politicians to a certain extent, but in a way where it's incredibly corrupt and weaponized. I don't think it's for the greater good of society or as a whole. That being said, I do think there are a lot of people within the GOP that are authentically pro-life and are really upset with the GOP platform kind of distancing themselves with the life issue. So I think there is an internal battle for life on the conservative side right now, which is really unfortunate to see.
So when somebody like Pearl says, forget about it, this is a losing issue, move on to issues you can win. I almost wonder what sort of issues, maybe she brings this up in any of her other tweets or on her podcast or whatever, but where do you think the GOP can actually win on? Like, where have they performed well on? What has come out that is even well? I mean, a lot of people are in this party, or in that party, I am not a registered Republican, are in that party because of social conservative issues, because people oppose abortion, because people oppose gay marriage. Those are the values that people wish to conserve. And so if those are the issues that we're going to just ignore, well, then how is the Republican Party any different from the Democrat Party of past?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head right there. It's like, what are we conserving if we're not conserving life, if we're not conserving marriage, if we're not conserving things that make us authentically socially conservative, then don't call yourself a conservative. We're not the conservative party anymore. We're more left than Bill Clinton was when he ran for office.
Correct.
And that's not a team I necessarily want to be associated with. So I think it's unfortunate seeing the GOP stray from their base, stray from what makes them unique within this country and attractive. Like, the social issues attracted me to the conservative party because I was incredibly agnostic, borderline very socially progressive on a lot of issues before I accepted Christ into my life. And I didn't do that just to associate myself with a party that I would associate it if I was the social progressive. That's what makes conservatives unique, is to be actually authentically conservative, which starts with conserving life.
I want to hit the nail on the head again, Anna. You said I did it once. I'm gonna do it a second time here. So get your hammer going, why are there balloons on the screen? People can't see us, but a whole bunch of balloons just flew across the screen. When I was just out of college, I did join the Republican Party, and the reason that I joined, I remember my grandfather was a typical like 1950s Catholic Democrat. And I remember when I joined the Republican Party around that college era, he asked me, why did you join the Republican Party? Like Catholics, and now his mind is the Kennedy Catholic era. Well, Catholics, they don't really do that. Why are you doing that? And the reason that I gave him was because I support pro-life policies, and I support marriage being the union of one man and one woman for life. And I found, I hate to say refuge, but I found a home in a certain sense in the Republican Party, that this party represented me. So I'm going to go opposite of Pearl here. I'm going to say that they're actually losing issues to abandon it, because they've lost me. I unregistered myself from the Republican Party. I feel now that I don't really have a home at all. Not that I should place my hope or dreams in American politicians. I would never do that. But I had a party that I can go to that I felt that I could actually be represented in, and have politicians that not only shared my views about abortion, marriage, and all those other social issues, but enact them into law, campaign on them, do legislate laws regarding them. And they've abandoned that, and in a lot of ways they lost me, and they've lost a lot of other people that I know. So I think, an opposite of what Pearl said, if the Republican Party wants to win, it needs to bring back those people that it's losing. It's winning people from other sides, but it's losing the base. It's losing the majority of what once made this party a pretty strong party for us, that now I'm like, you know what, I don't think I can support that anymore. So there's a loss here, not a win. Tell me, I hit the hammer on the head, or the nail on the head.
You definitely did. I had a lot of people text me after the change in the GOP platform saying, I feel politically homeless. I felt politically homeless when they said that too, because I'm almost a single issue voter when it comes to the life issue. Once you abandon that, the most important issue, the gravest human rights injustice of our time, like, what are you conserving? Like I mentioned prior, don't call yourself the conservative party if you're not conserving anything anymore. That is your base. I remember there was a politician recently too that's associated with the Republican Party that I shall not name at this point, but he's been going after social conservatives a lot, even compared us to the far right, the radical left. So we're like far right radicals. If we believe and adopt these, like, what makes a conservative, like issues like a federal abortion ban or being against gay marriage, like, and that doesn't make us radical. That just makes us conservative. So why are you attacking your base at that point, when we are the ones that you guys need to lean on? And like you mentioned prior, you might be getting people on the progressive side, but then it's just a battle between two progressive parties. It's not even necessarily a battle for truth anymore, because there's nothing there authentically conserving, unless you call tax cuts a conserving issue, which I do think is important to some degree, but morality definitely needs to be uplifted and fought for within our society. And if it's just progressive on both sides, there's not necessarily a difference anymore, or it might come to a point where there's quite literally no longer a difference, and the social conservatives will ultimately and officially be politically homeless.
And it is so fun to talk with you. You always come out hitting grand slams and all that with your pro-life points. So all of we've gotten a lot of views lately on our weekly show, over 1,000 views each time. So again, we thank our audience for getting those numbers up. So follow Anna on Twitter. She's got an Instagram page as well. You just put your name out there. I don't do that. And your name is just, unless it's not your real name, maybe you're hiding something from us, but no, I admire that you're putting your name to your position. So follow her on all her social media platforms, and a lot of great content. So thank you for coming on, Anna, and sharing not only your well articulated and intelligent arguments, but just your insight, because you're on the ground. You know, a lot of people don't have that initiative to actually get out there and actually fight and put themselves out, you know, in this war. And you've been at the Capitol. I know you were there, I think, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, right? You were on those steps. So we need that. So cultural warriors, somebody's got to do it. So
I appreciate
thank you for your boldness. So thank you for coming on.